Good evening. I have 6:30, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is capital projects. And Mr. Ted Henry is here to talk with us about capital projects. Mr. Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, everyone. Capital projects is a broad topic, but in order to, I think we started in January talking about prioritization of projects, and now I come back with somewhat of a forecast to present to you so we can start putting some plans together. I will note this is not a budget. This is a sandbox where we can play. This is a forecast that will identify issues we might see in the future. So I don't want anybody to think everything's set in stone. It's more of I'm looking out into the future and trying to set different things in motion. There's the list of 16 priorities we have. I crossed off the ones we know we're going to do this year. I don't think there's need to talk about too many of those. Just like everything in Bel Aire, we need to start with land debt. I try to show this every time I can. That gray line was where we were 2010 series, and you can tell in about 2019 you're going to see a balloon payment come. In 2017 we shaved that balloon payment down and then started to sell a lot of land. So what we did is took some of the proceeds and lowered that completely, that graph completely down to where it's at right now in the gold line. I know we talked a little bit about what interest rate we have on our bond, on our land debt bonds. The blue is our interest due on the bonds. So when I say, really we're kind of at the end of our mortgage, there's not a lot of meat left on the interest once we make a payment. So that's where we're at on our biggest debt. Total debt in total, if you look out 15 years or really closer to 10 now, it's nice. It's coming up on us. You'll see our debts slowly lowering down when we get done paying the land debt. It has dramatic reduce our total debt service. The green is what all the past projects we've done. The gold would be the special assessments we had that we carried for a few years. With land sales, we remove those special assessments. That creates some budget savings. The blue would be Woodlawn after we're all done. So that's kind of the debt structure of the city going forward. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see with this slide, but yeah, it'll kick on in 2024 will be our final. We'll go ahead and bond and get that debt. Yep, he's right into me. And that's where I want to I know we had this conversation with Kevin Cowan a little bit last time we met, but temp notes, I like this. There's a lot of variables when you're in the construction phase of a big project. A temporary note is used as a short-term, maybe 3-year window, so we can finance the project, and then we have a final cost that we go on to bond with. It kind of allows some flexibility, and we're not really used to high interest rate environment, but during lower interest rate environment, you'd typically go temp note, and as soon as the project's done, you'd go straight to bond. This way it gives you some flexibility. You can call that temp note at any time in the 3-year period to get a bond rate that maybe was a little better. The other thing I like, and if you're on the CCUA board, they'll talk about arbitrage sometimes. With temp to permanent, you don't really have arbitrage, because arbitrage is if you borrow money at a lower rate and then you put it in a money market account and you gain a larger interest rate. The feds don't quite like that because we're a city. We're not really supposed to play the market. So you have to pay, more or less taxes on that. And with this type of
$5,000 last year.
Yeah. And so that's why I like this process, and I only lead into it because you can see the red line. This is the total debt we have. The red line's kind of where we're at. I would say the max we'd probably want to be. We wouldn't want to go further than that. But I did throw on some of our bigger construction projects to see what it looked like as we go. So we have first, we'll start construction on say 53rd Street in 2023, estimated about 2.5 million. Our second priority, say in 2025, we start construction on 45th Street as part of the WAMPO project. On 2026, say we start construction in Woodlawn between 45th and 53rd. And then in 2027, say we start construction on Rock Road expansion as a WAMPO program. I'm just throwing out, like I said, throwing out different projects that we had on our priority list and see how they would fit into our overall debt structure. Of course, that doesn't look very good if we start four major projects at the same time or relatively close. But as you know, we have some money in reserves from the land sales. If we do structure that, and you can kind of see pretty well with the gold at the bottom, what I'm doing is using the $5 million to supplement our general fund transfer to pay those land debts, and that lowers our total debt service bill on the general fund to that type of structure that we saw with if we don't do anything. This section right here, and it kind of represents flexibility. Those are all budget savings on there. So any out years, if there's something that comes up or something that we want to do, that is all budgetary savings right there. And I know you're going to ask, what if we just pay for these projects in cash, those first two? And I'm glad you asked, because I have that. So if we pay for the first two projects with $5 million, it's nice, but you can tell if we need to do reconstruction of 45th to 53rd or construction to Rock to expansion in Rock, we're going to lose that budget flexibility because that debt will carry through, and we kind of lose our projected debt savings as we go too. One thing I will note, this is a little lower payment in 2035 than the other if we use the $5 million to restructure our land debt. But I'm confident, I'm working with our financial advisor, that level of debt is not this level of debt where I go to S&P and they say, okay, it's kind of like a credit score. I'll put it to you. The more debt you have, the lower your credit score. Kind of with cities too, with S&P rating, I want to land at a debt level that's not going to affect our credit rating in the long term, and that should probably dictate where we want to be as we keep going and growing. So those are just a few, and we can stop and talk as well.
Yeah, on this one, when you're using the $5 million up front, what exactly is the scenario using the $5 million to pay for? Is that like instead of bonding the Woodlawn project, or? No,
this would be instead of bonding 53rd Street reconstruction for 2.5, and then our share of 45th Street on the WAMPO project.
We already bonded the Woodlawn project, didn't we?
Yeah.
The first half of it.
Construction of Woodlawn from 45th to 53rd, that was number 12 on the prioritization list.
Right. That's another phase.
Yep.
So
Woodlawn's
Ted,
already blue. Woodlawn's the blue. It's already going.
so Ted, I'm hearing you correctly that we could pay cash, but it would be better in case we have a blip. We want to have some room in savings in case something unexpected comes up.
And we're forecasting.
Right,
So,
sure.
But I mean, when I look at this debt structure, I like that. I like seeing that for the unknown. We don't know what we're going to need in the future. Also, this is pretty much 100% are doing. I was just trying to follow this line with spending that $5 million. So maybe in 2027 we have a banner year, and I'll get to a lot of other thing I'm saying. Maybe we have a one-time expense or one-time revenue, and we don't need quite that much money to make our debt service look the way it is. Then you still have more savings. It's hard to explain, but that's kind of I always lean towards flexibility because I'm a finance guy, but I understand both arguments. It's just, I want to present to you both scenarios.
Ted, on the Woodlawn 45th to 53rd, I assume that's again a WAMPO. That would be us, our contribution along with a WAMPO funding at that 2.5.
And I'm not off the top of my head. I imagine that it's about a mile. How far away is that on the WAMPO? I don't think.
It's not on.
Is
a
it just an
TP
overlay?
It's not on an MTP at all. It's
Okay.
the only thing that WAMPO even recognizes of these projects today is the 45th Street project.
Yeah.
I guess what I was trying to paint
But
as a more realistic picture on that.
Okay, so we have that opportunity coming up to update the MTP. Okay, so you make the application, you see what comes out, because the technical advisory committee will review those and they'll say, these are the ones that we're going to go with, and these are the other ones that we won't. So last time we did 53rd, we did 45th, and I think we threw Rock Road in there, and the only one that came out was 45th. Okay, so this year we get another chance at it. We only get that chance every 2 years.
I would make a suggestion that if we were going to go to a 3-lane and storm drain like we have on the first leg, that is only going to cover our match on a WAMPO to do
That's true.
45th to 53rd. So
Probably not
But-
enough there.
I think, Ted, what you're trying to say, and I kind of appreciate, is if we go with this structure, it allows us to have extra in reserve to be able to make say a project that's not even on our list comes up on our radar and it's a high priority all of a sudden, or one of these projects needs to get moved up, like accelerated, say 45th to 53rd, or even that Rock Road expansion. Maybe it needs to be done sooner than later, and that gives us the chance to make that decision later.
And the other thing I'm kind of cautious on is costs.
Sure.
Woodlawn's got me a little shell shocked.
Yep.
So that you're exactly right. I don't know what's going to happen, and then we all of a sudden need to expand something. Also, the whole cost argument. Who knows where that's going to be? But hopefully, we'll time stuff out a little better. And again, flexibility helps you with that.
So the red line is the 30%. Is that what that is?
No,
What
no,
is
not
that
at
red
all.
line?
That's just what we're currently paying in 2024. We're going to peak a little higher than 2023. But that's just our current debt load, I guess, total amount we have.
The straight red-
30% would, we're still,
Okay, so the straight red line, they're at about
Mhm.
2375, 2.375.
yeah, somewhere around there.
Straight across.
Mhm.
That was just your stab
I
at.
just want to show you where the
maximum
peak
debt
was,
load?
where the peak was.
Okay. All right.
So it's really arbitrary. We can go above it if we wish. It's just the what I hear from S&P as far as where our revenues are compared to debt ratio, where they want to be.
So that line will move as there's more revenue.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
Okay.
we can. I wouldn't. Yeah, red's probably a
But you
bad.
don't-
Red
you-
was
I
probably a
understand.
bad choice.
From
I
your
run out of
conservative-
colors.
From your conservative perspective, I understand making it a straight red line.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. But
Yeah.
we do know that it's going to move.
100% can move up. Yeah,
Right.
we're again just kind of looking into the future and trying to put some
Yeah.
basics up together.
Yeah, there's a lot of assumptions in here. I get that.
A lot of assumptions, guys. So, now that we're kind of got an understanding of the major projects that are coming down the pipe, the rest on our list are probably more suited to paying cash for through either surplus budget surpluses or transfers to the capital improvement reserve. Before we go here, I want to just refresh you on what an operating budget, what a capital budget is. Operating budget, when we talk general fund, we tend to talk a lot about personnel, contractuals, commodities, those types of nut and bolts of local government. The capital project fund is more, do we need to build a new public works facility? Do we need to maintain? Do we need roads? Do we, long-term, we're long-term outlook, long-term life cycles, whereas operating budgets tend to what we do annual budget appropriations. Just another refresher, about 50% of our revenues are from property taxes. One other thing, when I'm looking at forecasting, I really want to be mindful of what a operating revenue is versus non-operating revenue. Property taxes, we know nobody's going to just pick up their house and walk away, but we also have grants. Sometimes we'll get, those are specifically for certain items that we have to spend, as well as in 2022, you see we had a lot of activity as far as building permits. We went from what's usually about $175,000 in building permit fees to almost 600. Now, when I'm forecasting, am I going to forecast 600? That's not what you do. So I'm very mindful of what is an operating expense or revenue and what is a one-time revenue. Again, now we'll talk a little bit about assessed valuation. It's pretty much the total property of our city, and it determines how much a mill's worth. In 2022, we did about 300 housing units. That increased our assessed valuation by 7.5 million. Assessed valuation on residential, so it really was probably, let's see here, $63 million in building costs, but 7.5 is when you times it by 11.5, which is the residential rate to get to assessed value. For my projections, I'm not going to go as bullish as 2022 was. I did about 75 new units at $350,000 cost. That's, we're averaging around 80 to 100 on normal years. So I figured that would be a pretty conservative estimate. We're probably going to beat that, but there'll be years maybe, that we're not quite there. So I just wanted to let you know that that's what that gray line is. The gold line is just the value appreciation of current homes. I did 3%. Again, sometimes it goes up 5, sometimes it stays at the same, sometimes it's 1. I just, in general, the city, I did 3% as a expectation. What that does is shows about a 5% increase a year, 5 to 6% increase in total property tax collections, and that's what this graph here shows. We also have IRBs. In 2006 was our first IRB abatement that we offered in the Sunflower Commerce Park. You do 10 years of that. 2026 or 2026 or I'm sorry, 2016 or 2014 would be the some of the years. So 2024, our first abatement's out. So now I get to start looking at these businesses coming back online and what that's going to do to our property tax as well. That's what this chart shows. Even better, that's what the gold is representative when you stack on top of what our general probably residential builds are going to do, plus our appreciation, plus the businesses that are coming online. A lot of the bigger ones will hit later on in our forecast, which again, you'll see when we get down to the bottom. You can't really trust too much of the later forecast, but it's important to know as we continue to do this every year, you'll see that creeping towards us, and it's important to keep in mind. Again, 50% property tax, 22% sales tax, and it's growing. A lot of sales, a lot of purchases being made, and as we grow, we get a bigger share of the county sales tax, so that helps as well. I probably need to work a little harder on how to project, as we grow, how much more sales tax we're going to get, but it's been pretty consistent, and the last few years it's been really, really well for us. One of the toolbox forecasters have is kind of an average annual growth rate. There's smoothing techniques, there's trends. I've went to school for a lot of them, but I just chose, let's just see what our average annual growth rates of most of our revenues are. And that's what I kind of pinged my forecast with, around 7% for sales tax, 3% for motor vehicles tax, 5% for franchise fees. Now, franchise fees is another one. The more houses we build, the bigger that's going to grow. 5% might be conservative, and then so forth and so on. On sales tax collections, here's what that graph looks like. We've been 13% increase and 11% increase in the last 2 years. But as you know, there was some, shall I say, funny money. There was a lot of money floating around in the economy the last 2 years. So in 2023, I kind of tried to reset it a little bit to act like normal. We'll probably surpass what I budgeted in 2023. But as you'll see in my forecast, I'm not going to project that we go up this way. I'm more projecting as a slimmer slope of around 7%. Other revenues, probably around 2%. When I said operational revenues versus one-time revenues, that 2022, that's our building permits. So we might have some of these tents as we're developing, or valleys. I hope not valleys, but that's what forecasting is all about, is to try to eliminate those peaks and try to smooth those over. And I say that I went to school for this. I spent a lot of hours on this, and total revenues went up about 5% a year. So I hate when that happens. It's, you do all this work and then you step back and look, it's like, it's about 5% a year. So a lot of the older finance guys, I'm sure they just say, about 5, but I put in the work and still got the same result, but that's okay. If we move to expense sides, I always like to throw our budget goals out because we're constantly prioritizing and budgeting. I know, flat mill levy. We want to improve some streets in the city. We haven't said it in a while, but there's about $12 million that we were behind on street improvements, and we've really made a dent in that, I'd say, over the last 4 or 5 years. But there is quite that, where the city was just trying to make payments and get it going. So now that we're coming out of it, we know that that's a priority. Continue to provide quality service with efficiency. I know that's very important for you guys when we try that. And then also sustain fiscal stability. We're not, I remember 2008, and I know everybody else does. We're not going to try to do anything we can't do. Out of all the graphs I've made, this might be one of the scariest ones for me and you. That blue line shows us growing about 250 residents a year. The red line's about 500. It just seems like a huge difference. And like I said, we did 300 units in 2022. If you just put 3 people in all 300 of those units, you got 900 residents, new residents. And that's where that red line might be our line. So we have to be somewhat cognizant of what we're doing and how we can manage this growth in the next 5 to 10 years. That involves service, as you know. This is kind of a breakout of our current employees. One big thing is, and we talked a lot about budget, is police officers. Number of police officers per population, we're on the lower side. We added one last year. I just took, the average in this graph is 2.2. In 5 years, if we grow at 500, we'll be at 11,000 population. 2.2 times 11, 24.2. We're at 14 officers now. So in 5 years, if we grow, we'll be about 10 officers under the average. So we have to think of that as well and keep working at our annual budgets and where we're at, and to make sure our city's safe. So something to think about. I'm sure Chief will talk to you all about that. On the personnel side, we've done a lot of work trying to match the market, really be competitive with our staff. I really, probably 10 years, or the next 5, I don't see a major study where we need to. So I did about 3 to 5% on existing staff growth. We're going to have turnover. That's going to help with existing, but in the 5 years, you can kind of see it's sloping a little higher. I went ahead and added, see what happens if we added a police officer in 2024, 25, 26, 27, just one a year, boom, 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 see what would happen to our budget. So that's what I budgeted in personnel. It's still relatively, it's not crazy high, but it's still going up at a click, and it's going to continue. And we don't know how fast it's going to rise or what this new labor market's going to be, but that's something that I tried to forecast. On contractuals, that's your insurance, your liabilities, your copier leases, your mowing, janitorial, audit. I'm sure, I looked at, the feds want to keep inflation at 2%. So I'm as a barometer, they're going to really help us out. And I said maybe 3% growth over the next few years. you'll see we kind of do have a major bump from 24 to 25. I went ahead and threw in a new ERP system for the city to see, and that's kind of where I was trying to juggle. All right, one new police officer every year. Maybe we don't have administration staff member if we can get this ERP system up and rolling, and maybe help with some efficiencies, make our employees more productive than adding new employees. So that was, you kind of see the blimp in 2020, 2025 really. On the commodity side, that's your fuel, your maintenance, your postage, police supplies, your bulletproof vest, all that good stuff. Again, about 3%, just to be on the conservative side. You never know what's gonna happen. Again, I'll remind you, this is the debt service with using the $5 million to our maximum flexibility. I just went ahead and chose that one. So if you put totals of expenditures together, everything I forecasted, it's really pretty interesting with our debt service reducing over the next 10 years. You really only get an increase of 2 to 3%. I'm sure there's a lot of forecaster guys that are like, "You're crazy, Ted," but that's kind of just what I was trying to show is, we're going to try to keep expenditures as low as we can by paying off debt, but that's pretty the smoothest thing we can see. I would anticipate maybe it's more than that, but I that's what I came with because our debt is lowering. So here's where, if you've been through a budget season with me, you'll see, okay, we have more. If you have total revenues or operational or total revenues or over expenditures, then usually what we do is throw that remainder to the CIP and fund street improvements and all those bigger projects, and we save and spend. Some years it's not that much, some years it's more than others, and that's when we get to do bigger road projects, more stuff. So this is the next 5 years, what we have. Of course, the out years are a little bigger. And this is a slide that shows that's that little extra we go to our CIP. In the next 5 years, I'm projecting maybe 657 in 2024, 800,000 in 2025, 1.1 in 2026, 1.4 in 2027, 1.6 in 2028. So you can kind of see as we go, we're climbing a little higher with able to do bigger and bigger projects through our CIP process. And that's what leads us to the priorities that we have remaining and what we're going to use to fund these type of priorities. Really a lot of them are quality of life issues, as well as, facilities maintaining as we grow. So that's what we're playing around here. I just wanted you to see something so that we had some discussion topics. 2023 is pretty much set. We've done that. 2024, if we still want to go ahead and do the splash pad, that might be a good opportunity. The biggest thing I'll say is I maintained what we asked PEC to include in their road rehabilitation plan. So we're definitely going to fund that 5-year plan that we started a few years ago or a year ago. And then after all that, I thought one of the priority projects was 53rd from Rock to Woodlawn, giving a little more overlay. And maybe we can do that in 2027 with $1 million. Really, a lot of this is some years we're going to have more to transfer from our general to our CIP to build up our CIP to spend maybe the next year. So that's how real CIPs work. You kind of build up the budget and then spend it 1 year, build up, spend. At least that's where I like to see things. Expansion, public works facilities is a hard one. Like I said, this is only the next 5 years. In the out years, we become a lot more flexible in what we can do. What I did in 2026 is just threw $1 million because that's what we had available. Who knows? We're going to do the study first. I don't want to assume that that's the amount. I just wanted to show some figure, something for you guys to see. The ERP system, it depends on who we go with. I've gotten one quote just to see what their capability was. A lot of it's the continuing costs, and software nowadays are all going to per user, they know how to get money. So I'm trying to fight a lot of that, but the upfront costs really aren't as much as they used to be. It used to be all upfront costs, and they go to the next city. Now they say, oh, it's not that much to switch, but we'll charge you, so much per user per year. So the model's switching in IT, and I'm trying to judge, some quote was, like 150. So I just put 200 in as a placeholder. The quality of life stuff's the hard part for me. Of course, there's gonna be some years we're gonna have to build a brand new park, and that's a pretty big expenditure. I think if we just have budget discipline and say we're going to commit this amount of money to quality of life issues each and every year, I can not earmark, but we can kind of have that direction inside our quality of life puzzle and say, hey, we've been saving, let's say 200,000, or that's 150,000, but whatever we want for the last 2 years, let's go ahead and spend it on building a brand new park. That's one way. The other way is, as I've told you, we haven't forecasted just that. You don't know what's going to go. There might be some one-time revenues we experience that we can say, hey, that's going towards this project or that project, or that's where our annual budget comes into play. This is really the long-term forecast that we're looking at when we're thinking of major projects. But I just put 50,000 for each refresh existing park, the link sidewalks and pathways, build new parks, and then we can kind of interchange those as we go throughout the years. With that said, and I'll keep this last slide up, but really that's a lot of the priorities we discussed in the first 5 years. I'm not saying this is exactly how it's going to go, or even what's going to happen. Who knows what the economy is going to do? But this is somewhat of a roadmap we could look at and adjust as we continue to the budget season, which is 2 short months from now. So,
Well, I like the slide 10, which is, you also have it labeled as section 1, item A. I like that's probably the most prudent long range way to structure the debt. I mean, obviously it's all crystal ball. I got that, but to me, I think that hits the targets right. So.
And I missed the first part. Which one did you say? I'm sorry.
Well, it's on the packet. It's slide 10. I don't know
okay.
which one it is in yours.
I think it's the option that uses the 5
That one.
million
This one?
offset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more flexible. And really, what I have is, it's really not. We're not even going to consider till 2027 when that first project comes on, offsetting those costs. So right now we're experiencing pretty good interest rates. So it's nice to continue to capitalize on that if we can, if that's the will of the council.
I'm confused, I guess.
Sure.
We're talking about this and I'm hearing we're going to use the 5 million to offset, and someplace else we heard we were going to keep it in case of emergency. So could you go back over that for my?
Sure.
I have the same question.
Sure.
The difference between slide 8 and slide 10.
Okay. So, and it's kind of hard to see. There's a yellow box down here.
So where's the money on slide 8, for instance?
So
Where's the 5 million?
there's no, it's just sitting in the bank right now on this slide right here.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we use it. So you
Mitigate.
saw where land debt is pretty much straight in that other slide. Okay.
Right.
So this chunk here is being used, the 5 million is being used here to bring that payment down to this level. And then the other chunk is used here. It's kind of you gotta look at kind of the
Think
inverse.
about like a down payment on a house. You're gonna put more down to lower your monthly payment.
No, think of it as you and your wife have 2 separate bank accounts, and for the first 10 years you just been paying the mortgage payment, and then you decide, hey, your wife got a raise and said, I'm going to pay 20% of the mortgage payment. So what happens to your bank account is you experience savings of that 20% mortgage payment because the wife's paying it.
So fourth one slide,
Sure.
where's my wife's account there?
This side,
Yeah.
no,
Why is
it's
it-
not being used at all. It's a, oh, wait, sorry. This slide it's being used in the first two projects.
Okay, so
You're paying cash for them.
so does the red line come down then for that 5 million you used up front?
Nope.
Seems like it should have reduced it right up front.
No, because it's not going towards land debt, it's going to other projects. So instead of bonding other projects, we're going to use the 5 million in the bank to pay for them.
Right, so that initial debt should come down.
No, because as far as the 53rd Street, there's that debt, that 53rd Street debt came right there.
It's because you put it on temp note for 3 years.
Because I put on temp note for 3 years. I'm sorry. Should have been.
Yeah.
So that debt, and then it's offset by that little payment of the $5 million. So
But-
it keeps it.
But in reality, you don't need to put it on temp note for 3 years. You
Nope.
can pay it,
You
and
can
then
pay it.
you could still bond out something else in 2017 that would have the same effect.
Yeah. Tomato. You can do there's a lot
I'm
of
just saying
flexibility.
the interest cost
Mhm.
of doing a temp note when you got cash in the bank doesn't
Yep.
make sense.
Sometimes. I want to ask, I also want to ask a
Right.
question about what you said about, it came in the discussion about arbitrage and you said spent 75,000. Who was that CCUA?
had to pay $75,000
Okay, well, I was
in
confused that
arbitrage.
Bel Aire was spending
No,
that
Bel
money.
Aire's
And
not done that.
I was hoping the heck we
And-
weren't
and
doing
it's-
that.
To my
The problem-
knowledge, they haven't done that.
Okay, so.
The problem
so-
too, it's kind of it's a accounting. It annoys me accounting and trying to explain it to the public because you actually do. It's not necessarily an expense because your account grows. You just have to pay.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like-
there's two forces acting on your money, and all it creates is a lot of paperwork. To me,
To me, it's a little bit of a mismanagement, but I understand it's forced by the rules because of the way you financed your projects. It's not really mismanagement. It's just that after the fact, the rules made you do something that you didn't really
Yeah.
want to do.
but the remaining amount grew, and
Right.
It's not. It's like making money and paying taxes and being mad that you made money. Yeah.
Right.
You had to pay more taxes because you had to make more money.
Ted, can you speak a little bit? We've talked about this in the past about holding that cash to leverage it for grants and matching.
Yeah, I mean that's another. It's another way you can do things.
It doesn't slide 10 at least extend the flexibility with holding more back. You're not paying it all out. You're at least trickling it out.
That's the plan, and then it becomes part of your annual budget cycle. So you can say, okay, our priority is this, and we can keep that in the bank for a rainy day. But I mean, I think we do have to have a plan for it. You know, it can't just be there perpetually. That kind of thing. So I think we need to look on what bigger projects, and maybe the grant is a great idea. We've been trying for a year or two now, and it's difficult, but I think it takes that right project and the right circumstance. You know, and it might come along. It just seems to be we haven't quite struck gold yet.
Okay, I'll make another comment here.
Yep.
On the land debt, given that it's about the lowest interest rate we got, I don't see any value to paying it off early.
I don't, but
I think we'll get better value out of that 5 million doing something else than paying off the land debt,
Well,
especially if we use it for matching for.
That's what your
Other
slide
projects.
10 proposes, right? Is not paying it off early. It's just
no,
using the-
it's not. And excuse me, John, and that's where I kind of went with your, the two spouse bank accounts. You're not actually paying it off. You're just so say the red is the general fund commitment to the land payment. The rest, that blue line, the rest is coming from that $5 million reserve. So they're two combining to make the payment. We're not necessarily lowering it by prepayment.
So we'll be using less of the property tax revenue. to
Less
pay
of
for
your
the land
property
debt,
tax revenue,
And
exactly.
instead using the land sale proceeds to pay the payments over time.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of semantics, what you just said, Justin, because if we're
Yes.
paying a level payment on the land debt, then we've still got that 5 million someplace else.
I
That's
put
really-
ARPA right here and just,
It's what pocket is it coming?
I just put it in the
It's really
CIP
about-
just so we could account for it. We can dedicate it to a special thing, but like I've told you, they've really had some rules on it that allowed for general government purposes to take charge. So,
Well, you have to do a single audit on that, right?
so I talked to Tara the other day, our auditor, and she's going to walk me through the cities of the second class, our size. They have to do some requirements, but it's not a full single audit. She's been through the process. She's going to help us guide us through it. It's more of a checkup and then an affidavit that says you sign over. So it's a little lightened process. A full single audit's a little more intense, but
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that we should get that money spent as soon as possible on a project that complies with, whatever the rules are, because I know they vacillated on what the rules were and
yeah, I'm going to walk hand in hand with
So
our
you're gonna find
auditor
out.
because I said that's my number one goal this year, and I would like I don't want to do anything that's not, and so we're going to work on that and get it
but
done.
pick one of the projects that we,
Yep.
if 53rd is the right project and it meets all the rules, then let's just do that.
Yeah, I'm going to say that I think both sides of Woodlawn on 53rd should be kind of lumped together into a single project and
can do
get
that
that
too.
knocked out.
You could do that.
Because we don't think we're going to get to 45th Street probably for 2 years. Is that a
Yeah.
fair assumption?
That's probably right.
So if we could do 53rd next year, maybe we could, especially if we could do 53rd before we blocked off 45th.
Yeah,
What do you mean by both sides? You're saying that overlay for 53rd on the
yeah.
Rock to Woodlawn?
Overlay.
Yes. Number 7 and number 1.
We go to the first one.
Did
So
we have that extra lane in there at all?
the
is that-
what's that?
The turn lane is on there.
Is that turn lane in one of those? I thought it was one of those.
So that was the
separate
turn lane's number 16. I believe
Oh, yeah.
I believe we could do that with the overlay. Rock, the Rock expansion project. I think that's what they were going to lump it in with. Maybe not.
parts.
Oh, 53rd and Woodlawn. I'm sorry. Which was that?
When we do 53rd Street.
That's what it is. 53rd.
Right.
Sorry.
The estimate is 2.5 million, but we're gonna try to get some funding from the county and Keachai, because they also are on it.
Right.
So the thought is maybe 2.5 million would be our share. If they can throw in $500,000, then we can use.
Do that
some
lane.
funds To do that intersection of Woodlawn and 53rd, the turn lane.
To add that turn lane into Isley, right?
Increase that.
Do we-
Because,
I think John's
because
right.
that's the problem, is it backs up all the time.
Yeah,
What
the
the police
nice
say.
thing is, we can use the ARPA funds to do the overlay on 53rd, because we could probably get a better deal when they're putting the asphalt down on 53rd between Woodlawn and Oliver, than to go ahead and do the overlay from Woodlawn to Rock.
Yeah, the problem is they won't use the same equipment to do an overlay as they would a full street reconstruction, but I do agree it might make sense from a phasing standpoint to do it at the same time, but you probably end up doing them as two separate projects. But I agree with, it might make sense to do them around the same time or back to back.
Yeah, even if it's 2 contracts that happen at the
Right.
same time, so when do we think we might hear from other governments about kicking in on that mile of 53rd?
Really, it's gonna be when you decide you're ready to do it, because we're gonna take the lead on it. It's been engineered. So when you're ready to bid it out, then we'll bid it out. We know the price, and we'll go to Keachai, we'll go to the county and see if we get, because then we'll know what the cost is.
Didn't we also put in for a grant from the state for
Yes,
that?
we
So when
looked
would that-
at, Probably
For a couple
2
of months.
months, 3 months, we'll know that. So,
So do we want to decide in May about doing those 3 projects? Do I hear from other people here that,
Well, here's kind of what I'm thinking. Because one of the things I'm concerned about is getting too many projects going simultaneously and choking the city. I'm thinking when Woodlawn opens back up to two-way traffic, not completed, but two-way traffic, that's when we say, okay, you can go on Oliver and do that project, because we've already approved the project, we've signed the contracts. But we said, don't start it until we're two lanes, or two direction traffic on Woodlawn, okay? When that's done, then start 53rd.
you're talking about the overlayment on Oliver?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, I don't have a problem with that, but I think come May, we ought to be deciding if that's what we're gonna do. We ought to have bid numbers and, because we won't get it done even then. You know, we can say don't start till October, November,
I
whatever,
think by
but
then we'll have enough information about grants and what we can do. But I'm of the opinion, if we don't get a grant, we probably should get going on it anyway. Because that street is just, I drove down it today. It's, even after the other patches, it's still, I see parts of it failing again already.
yeah. And
One of the things I'd add to that is I think the quicker we can bid 53rd, the better, because it will get it on somebody's books.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is even if you bid it midsummer, knowing the season, it's not gonna start construction until the next season. It'll at least get out in the market, and you can kind of see what the market says, to see if you've got enough bidders. If for some reason we don't get any bidders, which I don't see that happening, but if we had issues getting enough bidders, we'd still have some time to maybe figure out, does next year fit or
So-
not?
right, I like that, Tyler, because
I mean, you could stipulate when they can start. You could say you can't start till March 1st of 2020, or whatever we want to say.
I just want the phasing. That's all I care.
yeah, I don't want to wait until they're done before we say, okay, now let's go get bids.
No.
You'll want to do it before the
So-
end of the year to get them started next.
So answer a question for me, Tyler, because you're involved in this pretty close. These projects that get bill funding are gonna have to follow the US government's requirements of $15 minimum wage and all that good stuff. How is that affecting projects that don't require that type of money? Does it still, the price is still pretty much the same?
So the Davis-Bacon wages would apply to projects that were federally funded. So yeah, if we were to take a federal grant, our project would be directly impacted by
Right,
that.
right.
But what you're meaning is, are there wages rising on other projects that aren't?
Right, so at 53rd, if we
I would
got the
say
grant,
yes,
if
that-
we got the grant on 53rd,
Yeah.
we'd have to follow the Davis-Bacon requirements.
Yeah.
Okay, but if we didn't get the grant, how much difference would we see in the price, the bid price?
I think right now it's really hard to predict because I think there's the labor piece is only one piece of the cost.
I know.
You have material, you have fuel.
Right.
So it's hard for me to really put an opinion on that, but I don't think the labor costs are going down. They're just gonna
No,
continue to go up.
My gut tells me you're not gonna see much difference in price.
I would be more worried about, is there gonna be a contractor available to do it? That's kind of what I've seen in the market the last year and a half to 2 years. The sooner I think we can get it out in the market and get it in somebody's backlog, the better. Is kind of my opinion, but and I think in general contractors think that way. They have usually a 6-month backlog is pretty healthy, but right now most people are a year or longer. So if you haven't already bid it by this spring, you may not get them on the calendar for next year. You really have to start thinking about the next construction season a year ahead because of the way contractors' backlogs are right now. And engineers' backlogs for that case.
Sure.
We're lucky because 53rd is already designed, but that's kind of what I was meaning about the 45th. It's like, we gotta get that in our hopper because there's a huge backlog too that they're working off of and you're just next to month.
If we go ahead and bid and contract the work, does that preclude us from getting the grant funding?
And we could do the advanced construction on Rainbow on that, couldn't we?
45th.
Or
No,
it's not
no,
on the
it's
list,
on
so
the
we
Rainbow.
don't qualify for that.
Yeah.
The good news is at least that one's the smallest of the ones we have to look at. It's probably the one that we don't need as much grant assistance on as some of the other ones that are much bigger.
Well,
It would be nice to get a grant, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that one might we just might have to fund it.
I just don't think we can afford to even wait on WAMPO for that, because even if it got on the list, it's going to be years, and that road really
No, you-
can't stand years.
Yeah, you can really keep putting more money into it.
It does feel like we need to go ahead and work on getting that bid and contract it to me. Knowing that they probably aren't gonna start for a year.
Start next season.
I'm assuming that would give our existing projects plenty of time to wrap up. I hope.
When's the Oliver one that's under contract? It's supposed to be done this season?
Yeah, it'll be done this season, but I don't want it to start until Woodlawn's back to 2 lane.
Yeah.
But hopefully that's August, or April, I mean. Hopefully that'll be April, it's back to 2 lanes.
And that one's not gonna have a shutdown, it's just they're gonna be shifting traffic, I'm sure.
Right. But it's still a constriction to the traffic, and you're already constricted, so you don't need to add to that.
Right.
But that should also only take a few days to do that, right? Because it dries in a matter of hours.
Yeah, you're on the 37th to 53rd. I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be 2 to 4 weeks, but I'm not the engineer.
Okay, well, compared to Woodlawn, that's nothing. So.
Right.
People see cones, and they've seen cones a lot, and they're gonna continue to see cones, so.
Yeah,
It's the price of improvement.
So it would be nice. I mean, perfect world, it'd be nice if you could get 53rd started this year, but I'm like you. I kind of don't think that'll happen.
I
But
like your train of thought though, thinking about logistically, when you look at the bigger map of the city and you're thinking through the impacts, kind of like what we did with delaying Woodlawn for a few weeks to make sure that we, didn't impede traffic any more than we had to during that period when 53rd is going to be shut down for that crossing. So I think the more and more we can not stack projects, the better, because then you'll have less chance of that conflict occurring.
Okay, now it's a Ted question. If we do this, it'll only affect next year's budget, right? And would we have to bond the whole project, or would we try to pay some of it cash out of that 5 million we're holding?
It's I'd probably run it just as a normal project. We can see where the temp notes are. Mayor Benaj had an interesting idea of basically buying her own temp note with that 5 million and then bonding it when it's ready to be bonded. The 2.5 for 53rd, I believe that's what we're discussing. So either or, and it wouldn't affect the budget.
I'm guessing if we do all three of those, it's going to come closer to 4 million. Because it's $1 million for the 1 mile of overlay, and then there's the turn lane, then there's the 2.5 million. So that's.
Yeah, I mean, the scope of the project changes, then all my math up there will change. So.
Brandon.
Another note I'd throw out there too is like, you're talking about cost sharing with Keachai and Pacific County. I would propose that probably the earlier we do it, the better, because all of those, I guess, we're seeing increased revenues right now, but there's no telling what that would look like in 2 or 3 years. So I'm a proponent of getting it started, because it probably increases our chances of getting some sort of a cost share, maybe the amount we would get from the county or from.
Yeah, and it's, like Ted said, that's the hard thing about forecasting, is because the grant we're applying for is 1.5 million. So if we would get it, that just changed everything.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we get some from the county and Keachai.
Is that the Safer Roads federal grant, or
It's state from the case.
let's do a state?
10, I know it's not a capital improvement project, but I know things get very sweet, as Ty has talked about multiple times, when we make it to 2035. And if one of the goals of this council were to steadily lower the mill levy, how would you recommend we budget that? Like, what would you feel comfortable with? I know we're forecasting out, but a half a mill levy per year, a quarter, what would be a good goal? Because I want that train started and not just hit the jackpot in 2035 without having already started that trend, if that's the will of this body.
I had the same question when I saw the bullet point that was maintain the mill levy. I would like to see us kind of change that budget goal to a slow mill levy reduction over time as this land debt comes off. I think it'll be really easy for us as a city to just increase our costs accordingly, because there's always projects that you can do and want to do. But I think that has to be balanced with not raising taxes as much every year, just when the assessed valuations go up. So seeing that come down slowly over time is a personal goal.
I'll throw in, I asked Ted a question a couple days ago,
Sorry, I'm trying to find a good
and I don't
slide.
know what the other people on the council feel about it, but we've talked in the past about a sales tax, and what I've always heard was it wasn't going to raise enough money to be worth the effort. But Ted tells me we can raise over 400,000 a year if we generate a 1% sales tax. I don't know if anybody has an appetite for that or not. I just gathering information.
I don't.
I think what I
It
understand is
spreads the cost to people outside of the city.
That's true. It does that.
the sales tax initiative, those are ballot questions. Those aren't
Sure.
council decisions, right?
Well, we have to decide that we want to propose it and
Oh,
want to vote
okay.
on
Right.
it.
Yeah,
So-
we have to put it on the ballot. Yeah.
TJ just released this in the news last week.
And,
It's the same reason I asked the question too.
Yeah. and a question I was going to ask Jackie, I don't know if we could build a sunset clause into a sales tax.
Yeah, you do.
Yep, you do.
You can?
By law, I think it has to have one.
You don't have to, but most do like a 10-year sunset, and then typically they're designed for something.
Okay.
It's for streets, it's for the public works system, for the pool, you decide that, you decide the length. It's very rare though that they don't have a sunset. There are
Okay.
some, I do know some that have got it passed with no sunset, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
Typically, they're a 10-year sunset.
Okay, well, that was kind of what I had in mind was 10 years, but when I thought it was only going to be 50,000 a year, I was thinking we'd dedicate it to parks or sidewalks, something like that. And then I heard 400,000. I'm like, well, that's a lot of money to be, if the voters would approve it for paving the streets. I mean, they all know it's awful. So,
The article I read about Keisha just last week that they approved it, it was like 163 out of 120 votes were in favor, and it was they estimated to generate $90,000, and they specifically said it would go to CIP and beautification of the city or something like that. So it's a very specific thing. But I asked the same question, and when I saw that 450,000, I was kind of like shocked, like, man, I can generate that much. And the first place my mind went when asking that question is, who is entering our city, who is beating up our roads. And I think as we continue to grow, this isn't the case right now, but as we continue to grow and look to diversify more retail, commercial, and start having a lot more people from outside the city, they're going to be using our roads a lot more than current citizens. So I am a proponent of lowering the levy slowly because I want to see property taxes go down for our local residents. And I would also consider in the future, being as it's already at 450,000, if we start seeing commercial retail development and some big investments occur, that may make sense at some point to help offset some of the levy decrease that it sounds like a lot of people desire.
well,
Is it
we certainly are hoping we'll get more retail. We're hoping we're going to have some right across the street in a year. And we're really hoping there's going to be something up at 254. If they go with gas station and a hotel, that's taxes right there. So,
is it the internet sales tax that has really changed a lot of the game with sales tax? Because
There's some small cities that say, I don't want a retail, I want a coffee shop with internet. Just to tell you how big a deal that is in the future, and it's starting to roll on, but.
Because I think if as local sales tax were passed, that applies to everyone who lives in the city's online purchases as well, not just the retail
It does.
that occurs here.
So
Yeah.
If it applies local, it should.
if, I don't think I would change my mind in the future, but today I'm not a fan of sales tax. I've only seen these sales taxes done once, so I thought it was a good reason to do it. And that was when they first did K96. Bobby Knight was the mayor of Wichita at the time. And he proposed that, and that made a lot of sense for that freeway. A lot of people didn't see that, but a lot of people did see it and voted for it. But that's the only time I've ever seen it that I thought I could support it. And I don't see us in that situation. If we find ourselves in that situation sometime in the future, let's talk. okay? But I don't see us there. And I do agree, I like the idea of maybe like a 1 mil per year reduction in mill levies until you're at parity with Wichita on mill levy. I don't know, that'd probably take 20 or 30 years to get there, but.
Well, we're 42 and Wichita's 30, I think, so that'd be 12
Okay,
years.
12 years then.
Well, and it's true, we'll never match Wichita for
Yeah,
economies of
it's-
scale, but we can get closer in the totality
So
to
That's
them
just-
for
that's just-
competitiveness. Yeah.
Just to have you a target to where to look,
We
okay?
get to add fire to ours
So,
too.
yeah,
So-
1 mil of ours equals, and that's why they do assess valuation. So 1/10 or 1/1000. So $80,000 is 1 mil for us.
Yeah.
How much do you think Wichita's 1 mil is worth?
It's a lot. It's a
So,
lot.
so that's
Yeah.
where the
That's the-
comparisons are difficult.
I know that, but you see, here's, and some people say, people don't look at this, but they really do, because I've done those performers for businesses, okay? And they really do look at the tax, and it goes in the performer. And sometimes that will make the difference in the deal. Not always, because there's a whole lot of things that go into a performer, okay? So don't get me wrong, that's it, but it's just one of those things that might change the deal.
We're here to, you guys, you're the decision makers. The only thing I'll say is the priority is, because it's either that or losing some of this, or, that's where you guys are going to have to juggle what your constituents want. You continue to do, you've always have, but like, that's to answer your question, is what do we need to do? It's,
It's a trade-off,
It's a
but I mean, just
trade-off,
this,
Yeah.
balancing these things. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing Ty and I will push back is if we feel our service is slipping, and we'll say, hey, we're not providing adequate service to your citizens, and you need to know that.
And we do need to know
that's-
that, and please keep. us
Oh, we
informed.
will. Don't worry. That's our
It's
job.
the 3 pillars of any successful organization: on-time delivery, quality product,
Yeah.
and budget performance, financial.
We
performance.
may have to skip a reduction 1 year if we need to, but
You might.
And, I think Justin and I, when we first started this, we're looking at half a mil levy reduction a year, and we ended up with more than that. And then we ended up with nothing the next year.
Mhm.
It was kind of really weird. And
Right.
so, but I think that was our target, was half a mil levy reduction a year. And it's $40,000 in the budget. And I think with the number of housing going up, we can probably afford that.
The only, and I'll show you.
And like Jim said, it's more of when people look at it, even if you're buying a house and you look and you say, Wichita's charging this and Bel Aire's charging this, that's a big difference.
So assessed value from 2021, 22, 23, all about 10%.
Yeah.
And
What we did with
That's
that
what
mill
we
levy
continue.
reduction, that's how it goes flat. That's that 2 mil reduction. And then,
Right.
So that's what you're going to be essentially doing. And you guys know that. I just want to point that out, that,
Yeah.
and it's perpetual. So, you usually don't get that mill back. So it's,
Right.
You are giving up not just this year's 40,000, but next year's and the year after, so that it's compounding.
Well, and hopefully you'll never have that situation, but if you really have to go back and raise
Yeah.
the levy, you can still do that. But hopefully you don't have that happen.
well, and we were so
usually a
tight
catastrophe.
because of the land debt payments. And I think we've got that under control. So it's not as big an issue unless we just went gung ho and fixed every street next year. I don't think it's
Yeah,
a,
I'm not sure.
And
And if we tried to do that, I'm not sure that we could get the contractors to do the work, and
Right.
then we
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to navigate the
We're
city
limited.
even if you could.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
We've got limited resources. But another thing to think about too is as we move forward and see, stuff occur along Woodlawn or Webb, there are other ways of doing, the CIDs, and there's other ways of collecting money that may not be a flat across the board sales tax. So I think we do need to keep our minds open to how do we help bring in more revenue? Because if the will of the council is we want to keep the mill levy going down, we gotta come up with some creative ways like grants or CIDs or TIF, like all this stuff we've already talked about in other meetings. We're going to need that as a growing city. So we have to keep our minds open to that too.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not proposing a revenue neutral mill levy rate because I know that costs go up, and so therefore revenues have to go up too. It's just as we grow really fast and we get rid of this land debt, our costs don't need to grow at that rate.
And the last thing, or I'll answer all questions, but the only thing that as a growing city, we have different risk. And I haven't had to say this too long, but the special assessment risk is out there if we see a dramatic downturn in the economy. We have a lot of development, half partially done developments going on right now. I have letters of credit, but they get released relatively quick when they build that fast. So I know we haven't had to deal with it in a few years, but as a growing city, that's something we always got to, at least me, worry about how much risk we have out there and manage that as well. That's why we kind of have the 30% reserve policy as well as other things. But that's where I would push back if we're starting to bleed reserves and that type of thing. Is I'm going to say, okay, my risk factor is going off.
I've got another argument for our half mil decrease is the IRB is expiring. They're going to catch most of that at 40,000. 20,000 would be half a mil, right? So.
And businesses and I talked a little bit about, so you have appraised value and then you times it by 11.5 for residential, but businesses are times 25. So they have even more of a assessed value.
Right, but you're just Century Manufacturing coming off as $20,000 next year, so there's half a mil, and that's quarter of a mil. I thought he said a mil was 40,000.
I think I pointed to a different tax year, but
80.
anyway, we're approaching 9. Yeah, we're approaching 9. We might get over 100 this year, so 100,000 a mil. Yeah, close.
Okay, whatever. I mean,
Yeah. Sorry,
we could justify a little bit because anyway, the IRBs are coming off, and we got them started, and that was the whole point. But now that they're start paying taxes again, that's kind of like everything else. Anything we can do to save the citizens money, spread the wealth or the debt, whichever way you want to.
I'd say also as we grow more commercially, those businesses, warehouses and everything we're seeing coming through are demanding less services per dwelling or per square foot or however you want to quantify it. So as we continue to grow and diversify what kind of industries we have, and we're not just so reliant on residential property taxes, that's also a major thing for a growing city. So we're kind of fortunate that we're in a spot where there's a lot of opportunity for that kind of development to continue to occur.
Right. We're starting to see the benefit of 10 years of effort here.
Yep.
Good. So does that give you direction needed?
Yeah, I mean, this was almost purely informative, but I will take everything and I will look around. But hopefully we all learned something tonight.
Yeah. Well, thank you for putting that together. When I first saw that in slides, I thought, man, I'm going to have a lot of questions for Ted, but I think you answered it pretty well. So thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
So the next item is economic development and some things I've been working on. Do you have those PowerPoint guys that you pull that? Okay. So there's a lot of things we talked about, that Ted talked about, that kind of go right into this too. So I was at the WAMPO meeting today, and WAMPO talked about, they had a presentation of economic development from Mays. Mays had 37% growth from 2010 to 2020. Still only put them about 5,000 people. But they projected their growth to be over 14,000 within like 5-10 years. I don't know exactly the time frame that they said that because of all the developments they got going on, but they don't have as many developments going on as we do. They got 15, and I think we got about 20. And they counted 2,400 living units. What's our projection on living units in the 20 developments? I think you did something like that on a month or two ago. Yeah, I thought you said something about a 6,000 person growth, but that's assuming all the developments build out and fill up, and that's sometimes a big assumption. So this is not a fancy PowerPoint. It's just really some notes and discussion. So we'll just walk through it. But the first thing I wanted to know, we do have a pretty good marketing website, but it got like less than 200 hits last year. And so it needs to be promoted, but it also it's got dated information. We need to update the information. So can we click on that?
There's one right there.
This is,
Last one. Just go. There you
I can, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to, that's a link. Yeah, just click on that, bring that up. So I don't know if anybody's looked at this website before. If you have, great. If not, I'm not going to walk through everything here, but it does have a couple of interesting things. So if you look at expand the edge, if we can slide over to that and click that down. So it's got retail market supply, and it's got these numbers. These are old numbers. These needs to be updated. It has the supply and it has what the demand was, the projected demand. And so those are pretty good things, but it's dated information. So we need to update that. Okay. So I'm not going to go through everything here, but if you have a chance to go through there, you probably go through that whole website in less than 30 minutes because there's some information there, but not a lot. And then it hasn't been promoted. So, okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint if you could, please. Thank you.
One thing I got on that slide, Mayor, is would it make sense to add statistics from, and I don't know what we would share, but just to show I don't know how we would list it, but IRBs, not necessarily share
Yeah.
everything, but
We'll
share
talk.
some of that data.
We'll talk here. So now this is some more recent demographic information, kind of good information. So like the website says our average household income is 85,000. Well, this says it's 105,000. This is more up to date. This is done in late 2022. Now we could probably get more updated information from CEBDR at WSU than this, but this is pretty current. It's not way out of date. It's got some interesting things, and this has a pointer on it, doesn't it? Okay. So it shows the mortgages percentage of salary. I'm not sure that that's something we need to put on our website, but things like where the people work, what kind of jobs they have, that's always good information. The housing age is good information. I think this is income levels here. Oh, household income is up here. I'm sorry. I think this house valuation maybe. I'm not sure. It's too small print for me to see. So, but anyway, and the education attainment is very important. I think especially if you're trying to attract businesses, they want to know what this is like. They want to know about rooftops, and they want to know about household income. So those are all good things to have. So like I said, we could, if we felt like this was not current enough, we could get an update from CEBR. So the data information updates. So some of the things I'm talking about doing is community profile information updated. Like I said, some CEDBR, but we should brag about our community that we're Tree City, USA for how many years? I don't know. It's probably 10 years or longer. I really don't. Maybe it's 15. Playful City, USA. One of the safest cities in Kansas for as long as I can remember. We need to brag about that stuff because that's what people want to know. Top quality schools. We got 4 schools in Bel Aire, and every one of them is a top performer in what they do. Okay, we need to brag about that. And even Sunrise being a nationally ranked high school basketball team. Those are things we need to emphasize to people. Major highways, K96, 2 miles, I-135, 2 miles, Interstate 35, 18 miles, K254 is a northern border. And some of the things we're doing with K254, we talk about that also, so that a retailer or a business looking at that says, well, K254 is a problem. And we say, yeah, we're doing something about it. We actually got some traction on this one, and we've got some good things going on. KDOT is really committed to this. Okay. And I think there's a meeting for K254 corridor coming up a week from Friday. Is that right, Ty? Yeah. Okay. So, and that's going to be right here. So if you have time, sign up and come to that. Okay. So, and then some things about academic training. businesses want to know what they know about workforce and what workforce is available. They want to know about workforce development too. So what do we offer there? Well, we got some really good things to offer. WSU, major university, right down the street, right in our backyard. Okay. Innovative campus, part of the WSU thing. That's got a $50 million grant from the feds to improve the innovative campus. That's a recent thing to actually work beyond where they already are and push it further. It is, I don't know if do you know this, but who's the accounting firm that went, Deloitte and their smart factory. They picked Wichita because they said, hey, that's where the innovation is. Let's go there. And they're working to help that innovation. WSU Tech for STEM training. That is huge. And that's a great school for that. I always thought it was kind of odd that we even went down that road as a society, but we did. When I started in work, it was on the job training. That's where I learned to be a machinist, is on the job. I didn't learn it going to a school, going to a trade school or anything like that. But that's where the world is today. So, okay, so we got it now. So let's take advantage of that. National Institutes for Aviation Research. That is one heck of a facility out there. That used to be the old Kansas Coliseum. If you ever get a chance to see that, that is just one awesome place. I've actually not ever seen it, but I have a neighbor that works there, and I should tell him you need to get me in there someday. But I haven't yet. But anyway, those are really awesome things that we're doing. That National Institute of Aviation Research, easy for me to say. I actually have clients that use them for testing of some of their systems that they're putting on aircraft. So dated information, more things to update. Wichita metro area, one of the largest manufacturing hubs in the United States. We need to say that. That's true. Okay. We have a strong skill set. We need to say that. Bel Aire offers a place for manufacturing businesses. We've got that. And a great place for warehouse operations included. And we have this new 80-acre development coming on in warehouse. Was that 80 acres that he talked about the other day with the IRBs? 110. So I've got that wrong. It needs to be even bigger. Okay. So traffic counts. This is old information. See the dates here. 2018 if it's in black, 2019 in blue, and 2021 in red. That needs to be updated. But a couple other things that need to be done there is not just update it, but tag it to, get the right button here, tag it to potential developments. We know, is this Woodlawn? We know there's some potential development here. So we should tag that and say, what's the traffic count is right at that point? And what is that development opportunity? And we have those along here on Webb. We have them here along Greenwich. And we could even look at some of the other streets if we wanted to, but those are the main ones there, those three streets there. And we could tag those and say, this is the traffic count at this point. We could also tag and say, what is the rooftop count for this area in like a mile, within a mile of that? Because rooftops is another thing that retail businesses look at. They look at average income, they look at traffic counts, look at rooftops. If those three things are right, they go for it. I have another neighbor that says, don't waste your time with this. He says, we got all this mega data out there and that the people are going to follow the mega data. Some retailers will do that, but they're not all doing that. And to our advantage, they're not doing that. Okay. So, excuse me, friend, I got to get water. So those are just the things I just said. So don't just stay in time on that. Showing economic costs of Bel Aire. I think, Ty, you showed a chart here some time ago where you stacked the cost of water, the property taxes, and a couple other things, and showed a total cost for Bel Aire or an average cost for Bel Aire. I think we should revisit that chart, bring it back up, and then show an aggregate number for surrounding communities. We'll throw in there an average from Mays, Valley Center, Park City, Keachai, maybe even throw in Andover. I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but work on an aggregate and not point out each of those cities, but just say, here's the aggregated area. Here's what Bel Aire is. Because you're going to see that Bel Aire actually is a pretty good value. Someone told me here the other day that Bel Aire was the 6th best city to live in as far as an economic value. I don't know where they got their information or data from. I thought it was pretty cool. I'd like to find out what the source of information was, but I don't have it. Yeah, go ahead. No, I'm not doing that. I have a real hard time putting things out there you can't source. Okay. So what should the website focus? So I say this website doesn't seem to be focused. And in a way, I think it needs to do two things. It needs to focus businesses and say, here's what Bel Aire has to offer. It needs to focus people for new residents, because we know that the coastal areas people are looking to look inland. Okay. And one of the ways that they look is they go on websites and they look at websites. Now, I don't know where I picked this up. Somewhere along the way of all my talking with people and researching this, they said the thing that seems to click the best, especially with the younger generations, is 30-minute testimonials. So I have a suggestion there. And it is that third bullet there on that slide. Maybe our front desk, Tammy, could make suggestions of people to contact for this as she sees all new water customers. So what do they do? She doesn't tell them to do the testimonial. She doesn't ask them. She just tells us, Ty, somebody, probably Ty is the right person, says, I think that Joe is a good person for testimony because he looks like he's the right age demographic, and he just moved here from New York. Okay. And then Ty contacted them and say, would you be willing to do a 30-second video about why you picked Bel Aire? And we post that up on the website. Okay, do 2 or 3 of those. I don't want to overwhelm it, but just do 2 or 3 of those, because other people are looking. And I've talked to people who, well, why did you move to Bel Aire? And it's interesting the stories they tell. Okay, but they're not the folks that fit this demographic that we want to target. So I haven't suggested they do that, but it's always interesting their stories that they tell, and some have come from the coast, and some have come from Texas and different places, but it's always interesting. So that's the 30-second testimonial part. And says, okay. So I also suggest that the city website have a permanent and prominent link to the promotional website. So currently our 2 websites are not linked at all. There's nothing says here, go over here for information about Bel Aire. But that might be a good thing to do. Let's see. So the testimonials talked about, businesses. So promote current businesses. And that's why you have the Lewisburg brochure. I have friends that live in Lewisburg. We went and had lunch with them Sunday. And at the restaurant we were at, they had these brochures. And I said, that's really interesting. This town of 4,500 people is promoting their own businesses within their town. Well, when I went to some of our businesses in Bel Aire, that was suggested to us that we need to promote Bel Aire, promote our own businesses. And we don't have a tool for that right now. So one piece of the website, I'm not saying the whole website, but one section of the website is visit our local businesses, and we can list all of them that we want. We could have some of them post videos up about their business, a 30-second spot about, what does Empire Wall do? Do you know what Empire Wall does? They do some cool stuff. You go out there in Andover, if you drive through Andover and you see that development on the north side of the road, and they got those metal walls up there, those are all built here in Bel Aire, Empire Wall, those metal walls. And that's what they're doing. They're building those walls, but they also build metal lumber, which is, if you're familiar with construction, you build with 2x4s, build the studs. Well, in commercial buildings, you don't use wood studs, you use metal studs. They make those. Okay, it's all roll form project. but it's cool stuff. And when I first met the gentleman there, I thought, well, this guy's a little bit of a crotchety guy, but he's a pretty cool guy. He's really got a lot of great ideas. So anyway, allow them to put that 30-second commercial up on our website. And of course we would have to manage that to make sure that that's appropriate and stuff. And also we kind of got to watch for the aging of information. Things on website that get stale, people quit looking at them. Okay. So we always got to be refreshing and refreshing. We do that with our city website to some degree. If we upgrade this website, we got to do that as well with this one. And we need to have somebody who's responsible for doing that. Okay. So we provide a link to Bel Aire Chamber of Commerce, although I don't know what to link to right now because I don't think Bel Aire Chamber of Commerce has a website. I think they have a Facebook page, but anyway, we need to do something there to promote the Chamber of Commerce. Provide reasons to develop in Bel Aire, the different demographics, the traffic counts, the rooftops, educational research resources, and list what we offer. The IRBs you were mentioning, the TIFs, the STAR bonds, whatever those different tools are. And those are the only three I can think off the top of my head, but whatever those tools are, we should list. We will work with you to do these things. Okay. We're not going to do them all by ourselves because some of them can't be done all by ourselves, but we'll work with them and we'll make a process. I didn't say in here, but one of the big selling points that we need to say about Bel Aire is we are easy to work with. If you try to get anything approved through the Wichita, Sedgwick County planning, you're looking at a 6-month project. Is that true? Yeah. And we barely take 3 months to do any of those. Usually it's faster. Okay. We need to talk about that because developers, that time is money to them. And that is important that they get a project. Once they decide to want to do a project, that they get it off the ground and get it going. The longer it takes the government bureaucracy to work, the harder it is for them to make that project justify itself. List the new developments. We got 20 of them. Let's list them. And how many residents each will represent and when they'll be completed so that they see not only what the current house rooftop count is, what's it going to be? What's the current population going to be? Okay. We can't say when it's going to be there because that's all dependent upon the timing of the developments and how they sell. Update the website for the retail market supply and retail market demand and available developments. Those are there now. We just need to update them because they're a little bit dated. So, how do we promote it? So, first of all, I want to do a printed brochure. I've talked with a few people. I've talked with Wes Galen at Wichita Area Builders Association. He said, "You have a brochure. That's a big help for them to help promote us." Okay, but you do this and you put it out there. Now, this is a business brochure. This isn't what my vision for a brochure is. Okay, most of this I'm going to say put on the website, but on the brochure that we do publish, we'll put a QR code that gets you to the website that gets you more information than you can put in a brochure. Okay. So I've talked with Jenny Long and Ben Myrick at Northeast Magnet about developing this brochure and the link to the website, and kind of kicked around a couple ideas about maybe having a student contest with first prize maybe $500, second prize of $250. They do project develop brochure, enhance the website by April of this year. And they know that I was not going to be able to talk to you till tonight about this. So they know that timing is about right. Jenny Long actually has targeted a couple of students in her mind who would be appropriate for this, that they're graphics art kids. The reason I wanted to do that, I'm no computer whiz. I know a little bit about computers, but not to be stupid, right? But some of the younger people use computers in ways that I don't even think about. Okay. And I think it'd be great to have some of their input in here's what really is working today. Because I'm at the end of my career age, they're at the beginning of their career age. Okay. So they're going to tell you things that I know I'll never think about. Maybe Justin does, but because he works in IT, but I know I would never think about them. And I just think that would be a great place to get the right demographic started. They may not be able to finish the whole thing. They may not be able to get it exactly the way we want it, but they'll get us probably 95% of the way. Maybe they'll get us all the way. I don't know, but then make a presentation to the city council and you decide which one you think is the first prize or second prize. And that was just an idea of how to get that started. So where do we go from here? You like the concept of the high school contest? I heard one city council member say they not like that idea. They wanted to do something more professional. I'm not opposed to that. I just thought this was an opportunity to engage a local high school into helping us with that. But I'm not opposed to saying, okay, don't do that if that's what you think. But I think we could do it too. So that's really up to you. What do you? I'm interested in hearing what you think.
I've got an initial question here.
Sure.
If we build a brochure, where do we put it so that people get it?
Well, there's several places. One is Wichita Area Builders Association. We get it in their hands. Okay. We get it in hands of other local businesses to some degree. Whenever he has somebody come in and talk about anything with doing any development in Bel Aire, he can always hand them that brochure. I mean, that doesn't remove the conversation. It gives them a piece of information to take back with them. So what did he say about average income? Oh, it's right there in the brochure. I got it.
For
Okay.
people that come into the city, that's great, but I don't, you go to some of these hotels and other things and they got racks of literature and you can pick through, but
Yeah.
that's not going to help, I don't think, with this issue, because people are going to come, if they're moving from New York for a job at Coke, for example, do we get Coke to give them the brochure? Because once they've established that, Coke probably puts them in touch with the real estate agent. The real estate agent tells them everything. And that's kind of the end of the line for getting information to them.
So we
I
give it
don't
to the
know how to-
realtors.
If you can get them to give them out, yes.
Yeah. That's just a couple of things there. You give it to the realtors, give it to Coke as well if they'll take it. I don't know if they will or not, because I don't know if any HR does that, but they might. I can always be surprised.
I have seen information in packets at places I've applied.
Have you? Okay, that's good. And so
But
we
it
can
really
certainly
does
do that.
depend on the employer,
Right.
whether or not they
Right.
want to deal with it.
So that's certainly a good thing to do if that is a way, if we can get employers to do that. I think you give it to every business in Bel Aire that wants it to promote Bel Aire. I mean, they all have their concerns and issues, and they will have other suppliers and employees and the whole gamut of people that would have one reason or another to be interested in considering Bel Aire.
And I have seen in the past a couple of magazine size things
Mhm.
being distributed that listed businesses in the area. Now, clearly they solicited advertising rather than just doing it for free, but that is something that was
So-
available.
Arc City News does publish that. Bel Aire has its own Bel Aire edition of that, correct? Okay. So we do have that. Again, how is it getting distributed? I didn't even know we had one until a couple months ago. And so there's an issue with the distribution because it's just not known about.
Mayor,
Yes.
I was thinking about that too, but it sounds like you're saying something more succinct and maybe
I
even
am.
a brochure for potential businesses and then one for real estate agents to give to their
Yeah.
clients.
We could do two different ones. That's certainly something we could do. Yes. I haven't run through that in my mind about how to do that.
My general thought on this, when you're talking through it, and you mentioned and kind of chuckled about the chamber website, they do have one, but it's probably in the same state as or worse than the Edge current website hasn't been updated in probably 7-8 years. But my initial thought when you said that was this seemed like something to partner with the chamber on, to have them help lead it a little bit, or partner at least, and it make it a project for them to be a part of, rather than a student-led thing, make it more of a chamber thing. That was just my gut feeling when you proposed kind of some of the things you're saying. I understand the purpose of it. I do agree with it. I do think it needs to be done. One of the things I think we'll struggle with is who your target audience is. And if it's somebody that's Google searching the best place to live, it's more important that we make sure that we are in the best spot online than if we have a brochure. Now, I'm not saying we don't get a brochure. I think it's still worthwhile, but I think where we need to spend more of our energy, if we're going to spend a lot of time revamping a website and getting really strategic about that, is where is it going to be found online? When somebody Googles best place to live in Kansas, Bel Aire better be in the top list. If somebody Googles, where do I build a business? Bel Aire better be in the top of the list. Otherwise, we're just not going to get the visibility to make it a worthwhile venture, in my opinion. And I think that's the issue across the board. I think that comes up when you said keeping it fresh. I think that would have to also happen. I love the idea. I just think this is probably not the right way to get to people. If we really want to get to them online, I think it has more to do with how do we market it online.
See, I think you got to do both.
You do.
I don't see this as the primary. I
Right.
see this as the secondary tool.
Yep.
But when you go visit somebody, they want something.
It's like having
I mean,
a business card.
One,
Yep. Yeah.
one of the things that's interesting, we were talking about, our government issues that we wanted Topeka to be concerned about. And we have our letter, and we sent our letter in there. And guess what Sedgwick County did? They came up with a business card with a QR code on it that brought the legislator right to their top issues. Okay. Now their top issues are a little different than ours. I get it. They're a little more involved than ours. And I get that too. But that was a tool to get them to go look at that website. They don't have that tool to look at the website. They're not going to go there. I'm not going to sit down there and Google the city I just walked away from that didn't have time to give me a brochure. Okay.
I almost wonder if that business card QR approach might be even better than a brochure. Like personally, I'm much more likely to hang on to a business card than a brochure.
Like have like
Just
a
takes up a
motto,
lot of space.
a logo, and a QR code.
Yep.
Well, I
Do business.
I think your key is going to be to get our website and the chamber's websites updated. Because if I was searching online, or if I'd even had contact with you, I'm going to look up those two entities, the city and the chamber, especially the chamber if I'm a business, because I want to know what's going on. And if the chamber doesn't have a good website, it's going to be like, yeah, okay, never mind.
A good business presence. Yeah. I was going there too, John. I was thinking the same thing. Like maybe on our city website, there needs to be a doing business, and inside doing business is a hot link to the chamber. I think that already exists, but obviously the chamber website needs to be updated to make that effective. And then why would you live here? Across the top of the website would go to this, what is essentially a marketing website. But yeah, all would have to be refreshed.
Right. Yeah. And we should have a marketing website. I'm not arguing against that in the least.
Right.
We've got to market ourselves. We're a commodity like everything else. They can choose to live in Derby or Andover, and it's not that far a drive to any place in Wichita that, you can get to about any place here in 20 minutes. You go to New York and it takes an hour to drive 30 miles. So
Los Angeles is worse.
yeah, it's even worse. Yeah. So, I told somebody that once. I was talking to him on the phone. I said I had to go home. I'd call him back when I got home. And he says, "Oh, how long does that take?" And I said, "About 10 minutes. And he says, "Oh, it'd be an hour for me." And so, that's a real selling point.
Yeah. One reason I don't live in Los Angeles. I didn't want to live on freeways because I did that in high school and it's not fun. So.
As far as the contest part, I know I said that it's not that I'm against it. I do agree that I'd like it to, if we're going to spend the effort and time and money, I would like it to be very professionally done. And I'm not discounting the students' involvement. I think they could really bring some cool ideas. I wonder if instead of it being a contest for the website or the brochure card we come up with, maybe there's some other way we can partner with them that isn't owning that project entirely. maybe it's providing some deliverable that goes inside it.
They can't do the whole project, not for $750. There's just too much work involved in that.
But I like the idea. I think it's creative. I think that maybe we find something like talking about how cool the schools are in our area, and they own getting the data for that, and they own getting that stuff pulled together, and then helping deliver those to the marketing person that we hire. That's going to put that we could somehow still involve them, maybe to come up with some sort of cool motto about how cool our schools are, or something like that. But
Do you think the schools have a website that those students could put something about Bel Aire on? Because that'd be another site somebody's going to go look, is the school
They do have
system.
websites. I don't know what the rules are on them, but
Right.
they do have the websites.
that's true.
And each school may have its own rule. Obviously, will have its own rules, and the USD 259 schools are going to be governed by whatever the 259
Even if we
policies
could
are.
just to get a link from their site to Bel Aire, we'd be one up.
Mayor, I just want to say, I really like updating the website. We have a lot to brag about here about safety and location and that sort of thing, but I do think it is more of a search engine optimization question in this day and age.
Yeah.
Maybe more so than the brochure, but doing both. So
So I'm hearing that Tyler's saying don't have the school do the website or the brochure, but find a way to engage them. And I don't know what the rest think about that, but
What was the feedback from the principal and the other faculty that you talked to on this? Is this something that they regularly do with their classes, as outside projects, or?
they didn't actually say they regularly do it. They've done things like this before. They were excited about the idea of doing something for the city in this respect. But it's something they do hit and miss. That's why Jenny Long said that she had certain students she would target with this. She wouldn't just hand it to anybody because she knew that some students wouldn't be able to take it on, and others would excel at it. So
I think the students probably could handle the graphic aspect of the brochure, but we'd have to feed them all of the data.
definitely, we'll have
So-
to anyway, no matter who does it. Yeah, you got to do your own research.
Well,
right?
there might be some marketing companies that would do the research as part of the job.
Well, yeah, I'm
And
sure
we
they'd
could-
be happy to.
We could give them some, we could point them some directions, but
Yeah.
The thing about a marketing firm is that likely they've already done a city marketing campaign, and they're going to try to sell you the moon. The bad thing is they're going to try to sell you a bunch of stuff, and we've got to narrow them down that this is really what we want. That's the negative. But they're specialized in it. They do it all the time, and it's going to take very little time and effort from staff, other than giving them some stuff they probably already have pulled together. I think if we go the student route, it's much different than that.
well, with all the data that Jim's pointing out WSU has, maybe WSU's marketing department should. They're somebody in their business school.
You're talking about maybe having somebody like an intern from WSU marketing doing this?
Maybe.
Is that what you're thinking about? It's a possibility.
I think that sounds like something and maybe that the Northeast Magnet could still be involved, maybe the partnership with WSU Tech Marketing leading it and kind of assisting. That's kind of a happy medium.
Well, and
It may be challenging if you get too many players involved.
Yeah, it will.
It is. Yeah. You
Well, if
can't
the
get it done
princi-
quickly if you're not
if
focused.
the principal's got 2 kids in mind, I don't think a contest is a good idea. I don't have a problem with giving them some kind of remuneration, but maybe her 2 best students should be working with somebody from WSU.
Okay.
And they could take on, just the brochure part of the project.
Well, I could certainly entertain that. I
Just
hadn't
spitballing.
thought of going that route, but I could certainly entertain that and see if there's interest in doing something like that, both from Northeast and from WSU. You'd have to have both been interested and willing to do something like that, right? But certainly something I could go ask.
Ty, we have Tristan who does marketing for us, and she also does HR. So I know she's got a lot of hats that she wears. How much of this type of activity do you imagine being like part of our staff role on marketing. Like I'm trying to understand how
Yeah.
like Tristan would fit into the picture to help with this.
So, and that's the tough part. And you've heard me say this numerous times, is we're efficient, but sometimes we're not effective. So in other words, Ted's very efficient. He did an awesome job on his presentation, but it's not effective that he has to sit at the front desk and take bills when he has staff gone. Same thing with Tristan. Tristan's got two roles, HR and, and marketing. And so communications. And so, she's not effective. I mean, she does what she has to do of each, but everything the mayor said, I agree with him, that's awesome. Everything. In fact, Tristan and I have talked about it. I said, Tristan, can we do this 30-second, thing? She said, that's going to take me a day to 2 days to do that. Just the 30, because I got to go find the person. I got to tape it. I got to edit it. I got to put it online. That's 8 to 16 hours to put a 30-second video up.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I don't have time. I don't have time to do that. She said that I would love to do that. That we need to do that. So that's the struggle is, and like the mayor, we've talked about the Northeast Magnet doing some things for us. The problem, and you all mentioned it, is they need the information. So we're going to have to feed them the information. And we joke about it a lot of times. People want to volunteer for the city. Well, but then if we have to have staff members out there monitoring them, helping them, giving them we're basically doing it ourselves. We just have an extra hand. And so we've got to get them all this information. So I think, and then the other thing I look at is some of the slides, business related. We give the chamber $20,000. Can they not do some of this business stuff? Is that really our job to promote the businesses? Isn't that the chamber's job? So I guess my thought is, and I support everything the mayor is saying. We need to do a better job. No question about it. If it's a priority, then I think you need to look at our budget and set aside 20, 40,000. We hire an intern that can do this for us, because the other issue we run into is, we did the website, and you got to keep it updated. And we do a brochure, we got to keep it updated. So it's not just creating it, it's updating it. And that's where we fall down as well. And what happened with the on the edge, that was an initiative we put together. We thought this is going to be great. It's a separate marketing tool than our regular work, because our regular website is for people that are citizens. How do I do this? So the other one, well, then what Tristan found out is we're only getting 200 hits on this a year. I got to figure out where I'm going to put my time. I need to be updating Woodlawn stuff on our main website. So I'm not going to do anything on this, and we're only getting 200 hits. So, it's the prioritizing of it. And that's the struggle, that if you want that to be a priority, we'll make it a priority. You just got to give me the funds to do it.
Ty, I like a lot of what you're saying about the chamber. And I know when I got on the chamber side, after you had invited us to a meeting, I was like, what is this information? And I know the chamber has gone through a lot of executive directors over the years. Is this something that we just need to maybe tell the chamber, hey, make this a priority, and it's in their purview anyway?
I think that would certainly be a good start, is to pull out everything the mayor said that was related to business and say, we want you to do this. And if you don't have the time or the expertise to do it, then maybe we'll keep the 20 and we'll do it for you. And we'll do some of the other marketing as well.
So if I remember right, in our current budget year, we have 20,000 set aside for this whole project to do this. Now, I was thinking that'd be more the publication type side of it, but you're not going to spend 20,000 in publication. At least I hope we don't. That's going to be a lot of stuff. But we had 20,000 set aside for that. So is maybe the concept here is to say, hey, Chamber of Commerce, pick this on. And by the way, we have some budget here we can give you to do this. Is is that something we want to do? Do we want to go to WSU and look about an intern, or let the chamber head that up and look at the intern? See, I think the chamber, in my mind, is really two people that are the active chamber, and everybody else is the just they go to the meetings, but I don't. And maybe some of you that go to the meetings have a better idea, but I don't see them taking a project like this and really getting engaged in it. Okay. The only people I see possibly getting engaged in it is Kay and Gary.
Yeah, I would say you're correct. Most are members attending, but it is growing, and
Yeah.
there is some younger folks starting to step up, some businesses that are in the area, and I kind of like the idea of this. I know this is kind of after the fact. I know we laid out some expectations of them for reporting back to council, and here's kind of what we expect from you because we're helping fund the chamber. I kind of look at this as they've taken on the events the last year and a half, and going forward. To me, this feels like a very chamber-led type project. Not saying they're quite ready for it, but I don't think you ever want to give something to somebody when they're ready. You give it to them early so that they can work towards it. And in my opinion, it feels like something that at the minimum, I think we should try to partner with the chamber in doing. And to me, a big part of that's funding, and we've partnered there. And another part has to be the discussion of, okay, if we get this website revamped, because one of the issues with the chamber is their website needs to be retooled. Their Facebook presence isn't great. Like, there's a lot of things that need improvement. To me, this is a good way to say, okay, let's solve that problem. Let's solve this website that we're talking about for development. Let's make it kind of integrated. The problem will be is whose responsibility is it to maintain it? And so we need to be ready to step up and say, if it gets going, we get it revamped, we're going to make sure the city will make sure it's updated along with our other website or whatever that looks like. I think we need to have a clear picture of that so that we can explain that to the chamber and have really good expectations starting out. But I really like the idea of partnering with the marketing department at WSU and an intern, because you're probably going to have some consistent needs there. And maybe it's an intern project every semester or every year that you can partner. I like setting up some sort of relationship that you can tap into at a professional, agency, or in this case, the marketing department. I like where that was going. I think that has some legs there.
I have a problem with the intern concept because they'll only work on it for a few months and then they're gone. And then we have to find somebody else to take over. So if we had a relationship with a company, or maybe even just WSU, but
Yeah.
not a single intern, I don't think we should have that relationship.
I think you're right. Setting it up is going to be the big lift. I think an intern could maintain it. I think if you set up a relationship, but setting it up is a big lift. I don't think a single intern is probably going to accomplish that.
Well, let me go and talk with some people at WSU and see what I can come up with there. And maybe I'll talk with Gary about if he wants to join on that whole thing. We'll go from there. And then maybe we can figure out some way that Northeast students could participate at that point. I don't know what that picture looks like right now, but it's some ideas. So, okay. All right. That works, I guess. All right. Well, and again, that website, I don't mean to disparage that website. It's a good website, but it is dated, and I get it that you put it together, 4 or 5 years ago, and nobody's had time to touch it since. And it's unfortunate, but that's where it is. And this is what happens with these kind of video presentations. When I was running the doctor's practices, they wanted to put that stuff up on screen in the waiting room. And I said, okay, that's great, but you got to keep refreshing it, because if you don't, it's just stale, and then nobody pays attention to it. After 2-3 visits, they're off somewhere else, which is okay, but it's,
Just a side question while we're on it. That sign, I don't take 254 all that often, but there is a sign that directs people to that website on 254, isn't there? What's the cost of that? Or I'm just curious.
That was another one of our efficient projects. So what happened was Elk Creek, they had that sign at the corner of 45th and Rock. And then, of course, when that went under, Then the bank took it over, and it was just kind of an eyesore because no one was taking care of it. So city paid to move it up there. We got the sign for free, and then we moved it up there and just wrapped it. So it was a couple $1,000s, I think, to move it and wrap it, rather than 10,000-15,000 for the sign and that kind of stuff. So
But if you go back to that website, it says contact us. It's my email address. I've not gotten a single email from them.
Oops.
Okay.
Well, that's the other concern is if we're only getting 200 hits, we can't afford to spend a lot of money on it. So
That's why you got to
we
promote
gotta
it.
drive the hits somehow.
That's
Yeah,
search,
that's
search
why you
engine
gotta-
optimization will fix that.
Right,
You just
that's-
have to spend some money.
You got to spend some money to fix that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You got to promote it.
It'll fix it.
I don't know how to do that. I just know that it's done, and I'll let the experts go figure that out. How?
Yeah, I did a website revamp for our company a couple years ago, and I mean, obviously, you can spend a lot of money at that. It really just depends on, whether it's local, regional, like what reach are you trying to grab, national, like because they'll have different pay structures for top hits inside a region or inside a country based on specific keyword searches. There's experts for it, and they'll charge you as much as you want. But I'm confident that would help fix it. You just have to figure out what your budget is, figure out what you want out of it, what are your top search hits you want.
Yeah.
And they'll get it figured out.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. And if there's nothing else to talk about, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Sounds like a plan.
Let's do it.
What happened to the recession? All these guys are busy a year out. What happened to the recession?